Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues. Folks, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues, Senator Baldwin, who led today's resolution to block the expansion of junk insurance plans, Senator Murphy and Senator Hassan, who have been great, strong leaders on the issues of health care in the Senate. Now, just a couple of hours ago, both parties made it clear, yet again, where they stand on the issue of health care. Republicans voted to let insurance companies offer skimpy, junk insurance plans that don't cover essential health benefits, allowing them to nickel and dime patients out of medical care that the patients deserve, while reaping egregious profits for themselves. These junk plans, you buy them, and they hardly do anything for you. The deductibles are often so high, the copays are so high, that the insurance never kicks in. And then, when it does, there's almost nothing there. So, our Republican friends want to go back to the 1890s. Let the insurance companies rule the roost and do whatever it takes to make money on the backs of our folks. Not Democrats. We have stood up to the sabotage from the Trump administration and congressional Republicans and voted to eliminate the expansion of these junk plans that allow insurers to offer policies that are barely worth the paper they're written on. For all the noise of the 24-hour news cycles, the president's tweets, the latest palace intrigues in Washington, there is one issue above any other that is going to define the results in the November 6th election, and that is health care. And that's why we felt it was so important to get the issue before the American people today. Voters in blue states, purple states, and red states alike are alarmed that they've seen health care costs go through the roof, while their paychecks stay flat. Democrats have put forward a number of plans to reduce the cost of quality health insurance, while Republicans in the Trump administration do just the opposite. The insurance companies say jump, our Republican friends say how high. They'll do nothing to protect people, only to protect insurance companies. They've tried to repeal the health care law. They've tried to gut or eliminate health care for millions of Americans. They've eliminated payments that were intended to lower the cost of health care for lower and middle income families. And they've sabotaged the implementation of our health care law, making it harder and harder for people to get the insurance they deserve. They're currently suing to get rid of pre-existing conditions. Two attorneys general running for the Senate in Missouri and West Virginia, two Republican attorneys general, have the temerity to run at the same time they're trying to take away pre-existing conditions from average citizens of their state. No matter what lies the president tells, as he did in his op-ed today, or falsehoods Republican candidates are peddling, they're trying to get rid of protections for Americans with things like asthma, arthritis, sickle cell, let alone cancer survivors, while they jack up the prices to make a political point. Don't listen to what they're saying. Watch what they're doing. Time and time again, Republicans have sought to pad the bottom line of insurers at the expense of American families. Democrats are fighting for quality, affordable health care. Come November 6th, the difference between the parties on health care will be crystal clear. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. So, since legislative efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act failed last year, President Trump has been trying to accomplish what Senate Republicans and congressional Republicans could not. The Trump administration has been sabotaging our health care system and rewriting the rules on guaranteed health protections for people with pre-existing conditions and millions of other Americans. This sabotage has created instability in the health care market, contributing to widespread premium hikes in 2018. They have gone to court, as you just heard, to support a lawsuit that would take away guaranteed protections and raise costs for Americans with pre-existing health conditions. The Trump administration has now expanded junk insurance plans that can deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions, and these plans don't have to cover essential services like prescription drugs, emergency room care, and maternity care. I introduced my resolution to overturn the Trump administration's expansion of junk insurance plans because every American should have quality health care, especially when they need it the most. More than 20 of the leading healthcare organizations in this country, representing our nation's physicians, patients, medical students, and other health experts, supported this effort. This was an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to work together and to come together to protect people's access to quality, affordable health coverage. While I am pleased that I earned bipartisan support for my resolution to overturn the Trump administration's expansion of junk insurance plans, it's disappointing that too many Senate Republicans failed to keep the promises that they made to their constituents to protect people with pre-existing health conditions. I will continue my fight to protect the guaranteed health care coverage and protections that millions of Americans depend upon. The people of Wisconsin did not send me to Washington to take away people's health care. They need us to work together to protect people's health care and make it more affordable. And now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Chris Murphy.
Thank you very much, Senator Baldwin. Today's vote to put insurance companies in charge of Americans' health care is just the latest in a long, dizzying line of actions by this administration of Republicans to sabotage and destroy our health care system. It started the day that President Trump was inaugurated. He signed an executive order telling all of his agencies to try to destroy the protections in the law for people with pre-existing conditions. He then eliminated the money that helps to educate people about the health care insurance options that are available to them. In the tax bill, the Republicans passed a partial repeal of the Affordable Care Act that would knowingly result in 13 million people losing health insurance and driving premiums up by double digits. And if it wasn't enough, the administration then went to court to try to get pre-existing condition protections ruled unconstitutional, and now are trying to push these junk plans into American households. This is a systematic, persistent effort to undermine Americans' health care. And there's almost not a week that goes by that Republicans don't make it clear that their number one priority in Congress is to try to weaken protections for people with pre-existing conditions and eliminate health care for American families. This vote was as clear a description to Americans as to what the stakes ahead of us are. Democrats are going to continue to stand with American families, are going to put patients, not insurance companies, in charge of the American healthcare system, and insurers are going to continue to undermine, Republicans are going to continue to undermine the American healthcare system and work with President Trump to put insurance companies back in charge of Americans' healthcare. I think it's really sad that we couldn't draw more than one Republican vote for a measure that simply says when you sell insurance, it should actually be insurance. And by the way, we just passed an opioid bill a couple weeks ago. Let's be clear about one of the key insurance benefits that's missing from these junk plans: addiction benefits. And so there are going to now be millions of Americans who are going to be suckered onto these junk plans, who are going to have a loved one, a son or a daughter, become addicted to heroin and then not be able to get insurance coverage for that treatment. That's double talk from the Republican leadership that Americans shouldn't put up with. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague Maggie Hassan.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I just want to emphasize and underscore what my colleagues have said so well. What we really are seeing from the Trump administration and Republicans is an absolutely relentless attempt to gut protections, especially for pre-existing conditions. First, trying to eliminate these vital protections through various Trump care bills, and after that failed, turning to the courts to seek to get rid of these protections. So now we see Republican attorneys general all across the country going to court to try to invalidate the protections that currently exist that make sure that people who have pre-existing conditions like diabetes or asthma or cancer can actually buy insurance that covers those conditions. And that's what we're really talking about here. You know, a week doesn't go by when I'm back in New Hampshire and somebody approaches me to ask me what the status of health care legislation and health care protections is. It might be somebody who has a new grandchild who was born with some sort of medical condition that will, under an insurance policy, be considered a pre-existing condition. It might be somebody who is worried about the attempts that the Republicans made to undo critical funding for Medicaid, which funds the care that a grandparent might get in a nursing home. We heard over and over again over the course of the last year from the little lobbyists, the families and their children, where the children, some of them their medical bills cost as much as $1 million in their first year of life. What they're asking us is, will there be coverage for us? We work hard, we're willing to pay for insurance premiums. We just need to know that when our children get sick, when they need that high-tech care that America is so proud of, that we'll actually be able to get it, and that we'll be able to be at our loved one's bedside without having to be on the phone at the same time worrying about whether our insurance coverage actually will provide for the care. Americans overwhelmingly understand the importance and value of health care, not just to themselves and their families, but they understand it for their friends and neighbors. Employers understand the importance of it for their employees. We all know that we don't thrive as a country and as an economy if we aren't healthy. And more than anything, that's what this battle over health care is about. I have been very disappointed, but given the last year or so, not surprised that what I see from the Republican majority is an attempt to mislead about where they are on health care. But today, in this vote, they made it very clear that they will side with insurance companies, allow them to sell junk insurance plans to people who are desperate for coverage, and then as that person needs to actually avail themselves of the coverage, they will discover that it doesn't actually provide the care, provide the coverage that they need. When I talk with people in New Hampshire, they understand the difference. They understand that Democrats have been standing with them and demanding access to health care for everybody. Whether it's somebody with a child born with a severe disability, whether it's somebody who has a family member struggling with addiction. And to Senator Murphy's point just now, to pass the comprehensive opioid bill that we passed, and then to try to gut the protections that would allow people to pay for treatment with their private paid-for insurance coverage, is truly, truly wrong. So we'll keep working to improve health care, to bring down the cost of prescription drugs, but to make sure that people with pre-existing conditions can get that care. And we will do our very best to hold the Republican majority accountable for their attempts to undo it. Thank you.
Questions? Tried to not do you first.
That's fine. That's fine. There's a lot of questions about Jamal Khashoggi and what went down with him. If it's found that the Saudis were in fact involved, how does that recalibrate the U.S. relationship with the Saudis?
Well, it's despicable, and the whole world is watching. The Crown Prince is portraying himself as a reformer who's trying to improve and open up Saudi society. Reformers don't kill their political opponents.
of House Republicans' efforts to increase border wall funding to the $25 billion mark. Does that have a chance of getting 60
Look,
votes
we
here?
Democrats believe in strong border security. There was no stronger bill than the bipartisan bill passed by Senator McCain, myself, and the Gang of Eight in terms of border security. And we're going to keep fighting for the strongest, toughest border security. Yes.
The NAFTA rewrite didn't lead to the lifting of steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which means that farmers are still getting retaliated against. Will that make it harder to pass the new NAFTA if those steel and aluminum tariffs aren't lifted?
We have to look and see first at NAFTA, the details. I thought the president took a good first step, and I was supportive. And the idea of focusing our efforts on China, which is the true danger to America in trade, is a good idea. In terms of the tariffs, I think, that the focus ought to be on China above all, and we ought to try to unite our allies against China.
Does the Senate have leverage to get the administration to drop these?
Yes, they're going to need Democratic votes. They know that.
Leader Schumer?
Yes.
In 2014, Democrats didn't make a huge effort to try to unseat Susan Collins, but looking ahead to 2020, how much of an effort will you make to knock off Collins?
I'm not commenting on that. Yes.
The UN just released
I can't. You got to speak up loud.
The UN just released a bombshell report on climate change. Do Senate Democrats have a plan if they retake the Senate to address climate change?
Yeah, we have to do so much more about climate change. As we speak, a horrible hurricane is hitting the coast of Florida. And many of the experts say that the intensity and frequency of all these kinds of storms and other kinds of weather change is because of climate change, of global warming. We have an imperative to do something, and we would try in a bipartisan way to get something done. Last one.
If you take the majority in the midterm elections, will you support efforts by your members on the Finance Committee to obtain the president's tax returns? And do you believe the 1924 law allows you to do that?
I believe the president should have made his tax returns public when he ran. And any legal effort to make those public should be accomplished. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.